In the bleak vastness of the galaxy, where stars burn cold and civilizations crumble like dust upon the winds of time, a force arose that would alter the destiny of mankind forever. They are the Adeptus Astartes, the Emperor's angels of death, the living legends wrought from gene and fire, relentless in their purpose, unpredictable in their methods, and unstoppable in their fury. They stand as the last bastion of humanity's fragile light, forged in secret, born from sacrifice, and sharpened in the crucible of endless war. Their tale begins not in glory but in necessity, not in triumph, but in the desperate hope of survival amid the encroaching darkness. Long before the endless wars of the 41st millennium, before the heresies and betrayals that rent the Imperium asunder, there was the Emperor, a figure both divine and inscrutable. From the forgotten shadows of terror he emerged millennia ago, a being of unmatched intellect, power and vision. His goal was singular, to unite a shattered humanity scattered across the stars, to elevate mankind beyond its fragile mortal coil, and to wrest the galaxy from the claws of chaos, Xenos, and oblivion. The Emperor's vision demanded a new kind of warrior, one forged from the very essence of humanity, yet elevated beyond its limitations, the Adeptus Astartes. This genesis was no accident of fate, but the product of secret and arcane sciences practiced in the labyrinthine forges of terror. The Emperor's most guarded achievement was the creation of the 20 Primarchs, beings of titanic stature and intellect, each imbued with a fragment of his own genetic majesty. These sons were scattered across the galaxy by the capricious forces of the warp, lost among the myriad worlds they were destined to unify. Their recovery was the first great step in the Great Crusade, a galactic campaign to reclaim mankind's dominion. Each Primarch was more than a leader. He was a living legend, a paragon of strength, strategy, and spirit. Their traits were as diverse as the stars themselves. Some were masters of war's brutal calculus, others prophets and poets, some cold and calculating, others fiery and impulsive. Yet all were bound by blood and purpose, the spearhead of the Emperor's vision. Around each Primarch, legions of superhuman warriors were created, born from the refined gene seed, the sacred essence that would become the cornerstone of the Adeptus Astartes. These legions were no mere soldiers. They were angels of death, clad in armour that shimmered with sacred purpose, wielding weapons designed to sunder worlds. Their training was brutal, their minds honed to unyielding discipline, their bodies enhanced to superhuman levels, faster, stronger, and more resilient than any mortal could hope to be. Yet beneath the armour lay a complex fusion of machine, mysticism, and biology, a synthesis that made them both warriors and living icons. The creation of the Adeptus Astartes was also a calculated gamble, an act of hubris and necessity. To wield such power was to flirt with damnation, for the gene seed that made them was imperfect and susceptible to corruption. The warp itself, a dimension of chaos and madness, threatened to twist the minds and bodies of even the strongest among them. Yet the Emperor accepted this risk, for only such warriors could stem the tide of darkness engulfing humanity's scattered holdings. The Great Crusade was the stage upon which the Adeptus Astartes would prove their mettle. Launched with relentless momentum, it was a campaign of reconquest, expansion, and unification, an effort to bring all of humanity's lost worlds under the banner of the Imperium. The Astartes led the charge, their legions sweeping through star systems with overwhelming force and precision. Each victory was a testament to their might, each conquest a step closer to the Emperor's dream of a united human empire. Yet within this grand design lay a seed of paradox. These warriors were both saviours and harbingers. To many, they were angels sent to cleanse the darkness, bring order to chaos, and rekindle the dying light of humanity. To others, they were instruments of terror, brutal, unyielding, and often merciless. Their methods were unpredictable. They could strike with surgical precision or unleash storms of destruction without warning. They embodied contradictions, mercy and wrath, loyalty and rebellion, divinity and monstrosity. The Primarchs themselves were reflections of this duality. Some inspired devotion and loyalty, others incited fear and suspicion. Their relationships with the Emperor were complex, at times filial, at times fraught with tension. These dynamics shaped the legions they commanded and sowed the first fractures in the unity of the Imperium. Behind the veneer of triumph lay struggles for power, ideological clashes, and the weight of destiny that few could bear without faltering. Amidst the splendour of their victories, the Astartes were also bound by ritual and faith. Their existence was sanctified by the Adeptus Mechanicus, the tech priests who maintained the sacred machinery that sustained them. Power armour, bolters, and dreadnoughts were not merely tools of war but relics imbued with reverence. Gene seed was guarded like holy scripture, and each initiation into the ranks of the Astartes was a passage of pain, sacrifice, and transformation. To become one of them was to forsake humanity's frailty and embrace an existence of endless war and duty. Yet even this transformation was a double-edged sword. The near immortality granted by gene seed and augmentation carried a burden heavier than armour, the erosion of self, the slow loss of what it meant to be human. Legends tell of warriors who lost themselves to the machine, their minds hardened into unyielding engines of destruction, their souls trapped between flesh and steel. In this liminal state, the Adeptus Astartes walk a path where survival demands the sacrifice of identity, and victory exacts the price of spirit. And so, from the forging fires of terror to the blood-soaked battlefields of distant stars, the Adeptus Astartes came into being. They are the living embodiment of humanity's defiance, relentless in their war, unpredictable in their strategy, and unstoppable in their fury. Yet beneath the surface of legends and glory lies a profound question. What is the true cost of such power? What price must be paid for immortality wrought in iron and gene? As the galaxy teeters on the edge of darkness, these questions linger unanswered, shadows that fall across every battlefield they grace. The origins of the Adeptus Astartes are not just the tale of creation, they are a meditation on war itself, its necessity, its horrors, and its paradoxes. In their genesis lies a reflection of mankind's eternal struggle, the desire to transcend frailty, and the haunting truth that sometimes salvation comes wrapped in steel and blood. This is the beginning of a saga that will span eons, where heroes become legends, legends become myths, and myths shape the fate of the stars. And yet, for all their might, the Adeptus Astartes remain bound by forces beyond their control, their destiny intertwined with the Emperor's, their futures shadowed by betrayal and doom. They stand at the threshold of an uncertain age. As we delve deeper into their story, the question looms ever larger. Can these angels of death endure the very darkness they were created to fight? Or will they become the architects of mankind's final fall? Relentless, unpredictable, unstoppable. The Adeptus Astartes are more than warriors. They are the crucible of humanity's fate, forged in fire, tempered in war, and destined to walk forever in the shadow of their own legend. The stars themselves seem to tremble beneath the thunderous march of the Adeptus Astartes as they led the Emperor's Great Crusade, a campaign unprecedented in scale, scope, and ambition. This was no mere military endeavour, it was a galactic reckoning, a cataclysm of light against darkness, order against chaos, unity against fragmentation. The Great Crusade was the instrument by which the Emperor sought to reclaim the lost dominions of mankind scattered across the war-torn galaxy. It was an odyssey of fire and steel, and at its heart stood the Adeptus Astartes, relentless in their drive, unpredictable in their tactics, and unstoppable in their momentum. The Imperium that the Crusade sought to rebuild was a fractured mosaic of countless human worlds, many isolated for millennia, their cultures devolved or corrupted by the chaos of isolation. Entire star systems had sunk into barbarism, others had fallen to Xenos dominion, and countless others languished under the suffocating shadow of superstition and internecine conflict. The Emperor's vision demanded absolute unity, a centralized empire where humanity could rise beyond the petty squabbles that had fractured it. The Adeptus Astartes were the Emperor's sword and shield, the most potent symbol of his will to impose order across this chaotic expanse. Each legion marched with its own temperament, reflecting the nature of its primarch. The Ultramarines, paragons of discipline and strategy, embodied the ideal of precise and methodical warfare. The Blood Angels, noble and fierce, combined the grace of artistry with the savagery of the hunt. The space wolves, fierce and untamed, brought the raw fury of the wolf to the battlefield. The diversity among the legions was profound, each a unique expression of martial perfection, yet all bound by a singular purpose: to serve the Emperor and reclaim humanity's lost empire. This diversity was both a strength and a subtle fault line. While the legions operated in concert under the banner of the Imperium, their distinct cultures and methods sowed the seeds of rivalry, jealousy, and divergent loyalties. The Primarchs, despite their common origin, often held opposing views on the nature of war, governance, and loyalty. This latent discord would later erupt into cataclysmic betrayal, but during the Crusade it was tempered by the singular focus of conquest and survival. The logistics of the Great Crusade was staggering. Billions of souls marched in unison, legions of Astartes, billions of Imperial Guard, vast fleets of warships, and the relentless engines of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Each world retaken was a testament to human resilience, yet the victories were never easy. Many planets had sunk into centuries of decay, others were fiercely defended by alien empires or cults of chaos worshippers. The battles ranged from rapid surgical strikes to protracted sieges that stretched for decades. The Adeptus Astartes were often the decisive force, deploying lightning assaults that shattered enemy lines before their foes could react. The War in the Webway was one such example, where the Emperor's forces fought not just for territory, but for the survival of humanity itself. This secret campaign into the labyrinthine tunnels of the Immaterium sought to open a safer passage for mankind's ships, a shield against the horrors of warp travel. Though cloaked in secrecy, the success of this endeavour would resonate through the ages, shaping the Imperium's future defences. The Adeptus Astartes played a pivotal role, their resilience and adaptability crucial in navigating these perilous realms. The Great Crusade was also a time of immense discovery and diplomacy. Many lost worlds were reclaimed, and their inhabitants integrated into the Imperium's vast machinery. Yet this was no simple process of conquest. It demanded a nuanced balance of mercy and terror. The Adeptus Astartes were both liberators and enforcers, dispensing justice and judgment in equal measure. Their unpredictable nature was a tool of psychological warfare, keeping enemies uncertain and fearful. Some worlds were brought into the fold through peaceful submission, while others were crushed beneath overwhelming force. Amidst these victories, the legends Astartes began to evolve beyond mere instruments of war. They became symbols of hope, mythic champions whose deeds were sung across the stars. Tales of heroic battles, impossible feats, and legendary leaders spread like wildfire, fueling the Imperium's drive forward. The bonds between Primarchs and their legions deepened, forging unbreakable loyalty, but also deepening the schisms that would later tear the Imperium apart. The Great Crusade also saw the initial signs of ideological conflict within the ranks. While the Emperor sought a secular, rational Imperium grounded in reason and science, many of his sons embraced belief, mysticism, and even worship. This divergence would become a central theme in the Imperium's eventual fracturing, for faith is a double-edged sword, capable of inspiring greatness or unleashing madness. Perhaps the greatest paradox of the Crusade was the Astartes themselves, beings created to unite and save humanity, who also carried within them the seeds of their own destruction. Their immense power made them nearly invincible, yet it also set them apart, isolating them from the very people they swore to protect. Their loyalty was to the Emperor, yet many Primarchs nurtured ambitions and ideals that would conflict with his vision. This unpredictability was both their strength and their fatal flaw. In the relentless advance of the Great Crusade, entire civilizations were assimilated or extinguished, and the galaxy began to tilt toward unity. But the forces arrayed against the Emperor's vision were not idle. Beneath the surface, whispers of rebellion and corruption stirred, and dark forces moved in the shadows. The very fabric of the Imperium was stretched thin by the vastness of its conquests, and cracks began to appear. The chapter closes with the haunting realization that the very success of the Great Crusade sowed the seeds of its own undoing. The Adeptus Astartes in all their glory and might stood at a crossroads. Their unity was fragile, their power immense, and their destiny uncertain. The question lingers like a shadow. Could this relentless juggernaut endure the trials ahead, or would it crumble beneath the weight of its own contradictions? And yet, As the stars burn and the galaxy turns, the Adeptus Astartes remain the Imperium's sharpest spear and its steadfast shield. Their journey through the Great Crusade is a saga of conquest, unity, and the delicate balance between order and chaos, a balance that would soon be shattered. Relentless, unpredictable, unstoppable. The Adeptus Astartes are forged in the fires of war, and their legend has only just begun. In the relentless crucible of the Great Crusade, the Adeptus Astartes wielded weapons and wore armour that were not merely crafted but consecrated, relics born of ancient knowledge and technological arcana preserved through millennia. Their survival and supremacy were inseparable from the Adeptus Mechanicus, the enigmatic techno-priests of Mars, whose dogma and mastery of the machine forged the lethal tools of war. This alliance between flesh and machine was at once vital and uneasy, a symbiosis bound by necessity and suspicion, a dance of reverence and rivalry. To understand the Adeptus Astartes is to peer into the forge where science becomes ritual, and war machines become sacred icons. The Adeptus Mechanicus, custodians of the Omnissiah's divine machine spirit, were the keepers of humanity's lost technological heritage. While the Imperium celebrated the Emperor as the master of mankind, it was the Mechanicum that held the keys to its armaments, vehicles, and life-sustaining engines. Mars, their forge world, was a labyrinthine city factory, where the clang of hammers and the hiss of plasma were constant hymns to the machine god. Their knowledge was a mixture of precise engineering, mysticism, and secrecy, a labyrinthine liturgy that few outsiders could hope to comprehend. The Adeptus Astartes depended on this union for their power armour, bolters, and the dreadnoughts, war machines that were living tombs housing heroes mortally wounded yet still vital to the Imperium's cause. These technological marvels were not mere tools but extensions of the warrior's soul, revered and maintained with religious fervour. Power armour, with its ceramite plating and autosensors, rendered an Astartes a living fortress. Bolters fired explosive rounds that tore through enemy flesh and steel with equal lethality. The sacred design of these weapons was guarded jealously, the secrets of their manufacture closely held, for to lose them would be to lose the edge in the eternal war. But this alliance was fraught with tension. The Mechanicum's own faith, a complex cult of the Omnissiah and the machine spirit, often clashed with the Emperor's secular vision. While the Adeptus Astartes embodied human perfection through genetic engineering and warlike discipline, the Mechanicum embraced the divinity of machines, seeing every gear and circuit as holy. Their rituals to awaken the machine spirits of vehicles and weapons were as vital as the warrior's own gene seed rites. This difference in belief forged an uneasy balance, each side dependent on the other, yet wary of surrendering too much control. The process of gene seed refinement itself was intertwined with Mechanicum knowledge. The creation of a space marine was not merely biological but mechanical in its precision. The implantation of gene seed organs, the enhancement of physiological functions, and the conditioning of the mind were conducted under strict protocols, overseen by both chapter apothecaries and Mechanicus tech marines. These tech marines, half warrior and half machine priest, embodied the merger of flesh and machine, bridging the divide and ensuring the sacred maintenance of the warriors' living systems. The relationship extended beyond individual warriors to the massive war engines they deployed. Dreadnoughts, towering behemoths housing mortally wounded champions, were revered as living saints, their sarcophagi sacred relics. Titans, colossal bipedal war machines, strode across battlefields with devastating power, their control systems as arcane as their weaponry. The Adeptus Mechanicus alone held the knowledge to operate and maintain these engines, binding the Astartes' battlefield effectiveness to the will of Mars. Yet the Mechanicum was not a monolith. Within its ranks, various factions and sects vied for influence, some embracing radical innovations, others clinging to orthodox dogma. This internal complexity reflected in the technology supplied to the Astartes. Some chapters were equipped with relics and experimental weaponry, others with tried and tested but austere arms. This variability contributed to the unpredictability of the Adeptus Astartes, as their equipment was often as diverse as their combat doctrines. The sacred rites surrounding technology extended to the construction of the gene seed itself. The mechanisms by which gene seed was extracted, preserved, and propagated were shrouded in secrecy, subject to almost religious reverence. Each organ was a microcosm of life and war, a fragment of Primarch heritage encoded into every Astartes. The loss or corruption of gene seed was a catastrophe, threatening the survival of entire chapters. Thus, the Adeptus Mechanicus guarded these secrets with fervour, their cryptic rituals a bulwark against genetic decay and warp corruption. This intersection of technology and biology forged warriors who were more than men, yet still painfully tethered to their humanity. The gene seed granted them superhuman strength, reflexes, and resilience, but also came with risks: the temptation of mutation, the slow erosion of sanity, and the looming threat of the Black Rage, a psychic torment born from the shadows of their Primarch's fate. The Mechanicum's machine rights aimed to stabilize these volatile forces, but never could fully banish the danger inherent in such power. Throughout the Great Crusade, the Adeptus Mechanicus remained an indispensable ally, but also a reminder of the Imperium's fragile unity. Their obsession with maintaining the status quo, their suspicion of innovation without sanction, and their secretive nature created friction with the Emperor's broader vision and even among the Astartes themselves. Yet, without their knowledge, the Adeptus Astartes would be but mortal warriors, outmatched and outgunned in the galaxy's savage wars. This complex relationship shaped not only the equipment and doctrine of the Adeptus Astartes, but also the very culture of war they practiced. The reverence for relics, the ceremonial maintenance of arms and armour, and the intertwining of faith and technology forged a warrior ethos that was as much spiritual as it was martial. In every battlefield, the clash of ceramite and bolter was underpinned by rituals older than the Crusade itself, prayers whispered to the machine spirit, blessings of the Omnissiah, and the solemn oaths of the Tech Marines. Yet this uneasy alliance would prove to be a fault line in the Imperium's war machine. The Mechanicum's allegiance was not to the Emperor alone, but to the machine god, and their ambitions extended beyond mere servitude. Their secretive projects, their obsession with ancient technologies, and their guarded knowledge often put them at odds with imperial authorities. As the years wore on, the tension between flesh and machine, faith and reason, loyalty and autonomy would become a central theme in the Imperium's ongoing struggle. In the dance of war that shaped the galaxy, the Adeptus Astartes and the Adeptus Mechanicus were inseparable partners, relentless in their march, unpredictable in their ways, and unstoppable in their combined might. From the sacred forges of Mars to the battlefields of 1,000 worlds, their intertwined destinies were a testament to the complexity and fragility of humanity's empire. And yet, even as this alliance forged the tools of conquest and salvation, it cast long shadows. The question lingered like a silent echo in the forges. Could this union of flesh and machine endure the storms ahead, or would it unravel, leaving mankind bereft of its most potent defenders? The answer lay hidden in the secrets of the forge, secrets that would one day shape the fate of the Imperium itself, relentless, unpredictable, unstoppable. The Adeptus Astartes are weapons crafted in fire and faith, and the Adeptus Mechanicus the smiths who wield the hammer. The crucible of war is both creator and destroyer, forging legends yet fracturing empires. After the searing fires of the Horus heresy scorched the Imperium, the once unified legions of the Adeptus Astartes stood broken, their numbers shattered and their loyalties forever altered. In the ashes of betrayal and ruin, a new order was conceived, one designed to prevent the concentration of overwhelming power that had nearly doomed mankind. This was the birth of the Codex Astartes, a doctrine of war and governance that reshaped the face of the Adeptus Astartes, and by extension the Imperium itself. The Great Crusade's grand design had been one of unity and overwhelming force, where the 20 legions operated as vast, near-invincible armies under the direct command of their primarchs. This concentration of power, while initially a source of strength, became a fatal vulnerability when Horus, the favoured son, turned traitor and plunged the galaxy into civil war. The horror of brother against brother revealed the dangers inherent in such vast military might, concentrated in few hands. In the heresy's aftermath, the Emperor's successors sought to dismantle this structure, to scatter power, and prevent such a cataclysm from recurring. Robert Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, emerged from the heresy's ashes as a leader of unmatched vision and pragmatism. Charged with the monumental task of restoring order, Guilliman authored the Codex Astartes, a comprehensive treatise outlining the organization, tactics, and philosophy that would govern the Adeptus Astartes for millennia. The Codex was not merely a manual of warfare, it was a political instrument designed to break the power of the legions and decentralize command, fostering resilience through fragmentation. The core principle of the Codex was the division of the great legions into smaller, more manageable chapters, each numbering roughly 1,000 warriors. This subdivision diluted the risk posed by any one force turning traitor or gaining excessive influence. Chapters became semi-autonomous entities, each with its own command structure, culture, and traditions, yet all bound by the Codex's rigid doctrines. This fragmentation brought greater flexibility to imperial warfare, enabling rapid deployment and specialized operations, but also marked the end of the great brotherhoods that had defined the Crusade era. The splitting of the legions was not universally welcomed. Some primarchs and chapters resisted, viewing the Codex as a dilution of their legacy and strength. The Space Wolves famously rejected the Codex, choosing to preserve their ancient traditions rather than adopt the new order. This resistance highlighted the tension between unity and identity, as the fragments struggled to retain their sense of purpose amidst change. The fracturing was as much cultural as tactical, reshaping the nature of the Adeptus Astartes from monolithic armies to diverse, disparate warrior brotherhoods. The Codex also codified the doctrines of war that became hallmarks of the Astartes. Shock assault, rapid deployment, and combined arms were emphasized, transforming the Astartes into highly mobile and versatile forces capable of responding to myriad threats across the Imperium. The tactical flexibility afforded by the smaller chapters allowed for more dynamic campaigns, but also required greater coordination and trust between disparate units, a fragile alliance tested by politics and ambition. Gene seed management became even more critical in this new era. Each chapter was responsible for maintaining its genetic lineage, a sacred trust that required stringent oversight to prevent corruption. The loss of gene seed or its contamination was catastrophic, threatening the survival of entire chapters. Apothecaries became the custodians of life and legacy, guardians against the slow erosion of humanity within their ranks. This responsibility added a layer of solemnity to the fragmentation, as each chapter carried not only the burden of war but the weight of survival itself. The Imperium's political landscape was equally reshaped by the Codex. Smaller chapters, while more numerous, were less capable of exerting political influence individually. This decentralization diminished the risk of another war master arising, but also led to fragmentation of loyalties and rivalries between chapters. The Adeptus Astartes became a constellation of warrior orders, each shining with its own light but separated by vast distances and divergent traditions. The unity of purpose that had defined the Great Crusade was replaced by a cautious, sometimes fractured cooperation. Yet within this fragmentation, new legends were born. Chapters like the Ultramarines became paragons of the Codex's ideals, embodying discipline, honor, and tactical mastery. Others developed unique identities shaped by their origins, homeworlds, and battle histories: the ravenous Black Templars, the stoic White Scars, the venerable Salamanders. This diversity enriched the Imperium's martial tapestry but also complicated its unity. The very unpredictability that made the Astartes so formidable also became a source of internal tension. The Codex's influence extended beyond mere military doctrine. It reshaped the spiritual and cultural life of the Adeptus Astartes. The ritual of initiation, the veneration of relics, and the strict adherence to martial discipline became more codified, reinforcing a sense of order amidst the chaos of war. The chapter master stood not only as a military commander, but as a spiritual leader, guiding his warriors through the perils of battle and the burdens of immortality. However, this new order was not without its contradictions. The fragmentation that prevented concentrated power also made the Adeptus Astartes more vulnerable to isolation and infiltration. Smaller chapters could be overwhelmed or corrupted more easily, and the bonds that once tied the legions into a single force were loosened. The looming threat of chaos and Xenos exploitation grew more insidious as unity weakened. The Codex was a safeguard, but it was also a compromise, a fragile piece between strength and caution. The chapter closes with a reflection on the paradox that defined this era. The Adeptus Astartes were both more numerous and more vulnerable, more diverse and more divided. Their relentless spirit remained, their unpredictable tactics endured, and their unstoppable will persisted. But the unity that once made them invincible was shattered. The question now was whether this new order could withstand the storms that the galaxy would yet unleash. And so, as the Imperium struggled to heal from its wounds, the Adeptus Astartes entered a new epoch, one of resilience through division, strength in diversity, and the ever-present shadow of uncertainty. The Codex had changed everything and nothing. The warrior spirit endured, but the shape of that spirit had been forever altered. Relentless, unpredictable, unstoppable, the Adeptus Astartes remain the Emperor's angels, yet their wings now beat in many directions, their flight both magnificent and precarious. To comprehend the Adeptus Astartes is to peer beyond the layers of ceramite armor and gene-forged sinew into the very soul of a being both man and myth. They are more than warriors. They are living embodiments of a culture forged in endless war, steeped in ritual, discipline, and a singular purpose that transcends the frailty of mortal men. The Adeptus Astartes warrior ethos is a complex tapestry, woven from genetic destiny, indoctrination, and a martial philosophy that demands unyielding loyalty, ruthless efficiency, and a reverence for the machinery of war. Their existence begins long before the battlefield. Recruits are drawn from the most promising warriors of imperial worlds, selected not just for physical prowess, but for mental resilience and genetic compatibility. The initiation is a brutal crucible of pain and transformation, a series of gene seed implantations that reshape their bodies and minds. Organs duplicated from the Primarch's own genetic blueprint are surgically inserted, granting superhuman strength, rapid healing, enhanced senses, and the ability to endure conditions that would kill ordinary men. Each implantation is a trial of endurance and spirit, a rite that strips away humanity and forges the Astartes anew. Yet the transformation is as much spiritual as physical. The Astartes are indoctrinated into a warrior culture that demands absolute obedience to the chapter and the emperor. Their loyalty is forged in blood and ritual, a sacred bond that transcends family, kin, and even individuality. Chapters develop distinct customs, ceremonies, and codes of honor that shape their identity and influence their conduct. From the stoic discipline of the Ultramarines to the savage ferocity of the Space Wolves, each chapter embodies a unique interpretation of what it means to be a warrior of the Emperor. The warrior ethos is defined by triadic principles: discipline, honor, and sacrifice. Discipline ensures that even in the chaos of war, an Astartes remains a precise instrument of destruction, executing orders with cold efficiency. Honor binds them to a code that demands courage, integrity, and respect for the legacy of their chapter. Sacrifice is the ultimate mandate, the willingness to lay down one's life without hesitation for the survival of humanity and the glory of the Imperium. Combat doctrine flows naturally from this ethos. The Adeptus Astartes favor shock assault tactics, striking swiftly and decisively to break enemy lines before they can react. Their mobility, bolstered by jump packs and rapid deployment vehicles, allows them to appear where least expected, sowing confusion and terror. Bolters, the signature weapons of the Astartes, fire explosive rounds designed to annihilate armor and flesh alike, embodying the brutal efficiency of their approach. Close combat is equally vital, with power swords, chainswords, and thunder hammers wielded by warriors trained to be deadly in melee as well as ranged engagement. The Codex's tactical emphasis on combined arms means that infantry, vehicles, and aircraft operate in seamless, harmony. Dreadnoughts, ancient warriors entombed in mechanized sarcophagi, bring devastating firepower and resilience, turning the tide of battle in moments of crisis. Land raiders and rhinos provide armored transport and heavy support, while the sky is dominated by storm talons and thunderhawks ferrying troops and raining destruction. Every weapon, every vehicle, and every warrior is part of an integrated whole, a symphony of war conducted with ruthless precision. But beneath the tactical brilliance lies a profound psychological conditioning. The Adeptus Astartes are trained to suppress fear and doubt, to focus entirely on the mission and the glory of the Emperor. Their minds are sharpened to detect subtle shifts in battlefield dynamics, and their instincts honed to anticipate enemy movements. This conditioning creates warriors who are simultaneously ruthless killers and strategic thinkers, able to adapt to changing circumstances with unpredictable creativity. The psychological burden of near immortality is another cornerstone of their culture. Enhanced healing and genetic longevity mean that many Astartes live for centuries, witnessing the rise and fall of countless battles and comrades. This longevity breeds a stoic acceptance of fate and a somber awareness of the cost of eternal war. The Brotherhood's rituals commemorate fallen heroes, preserving their memory as an unbroken chain that connects past and present. Honor is not just a code, but a sacred trust, to live and die as part of something greater than oneself. Geneseed, the core of their existence, is both a blessing and a curse. It carries the genetic legacy of the Primarchs, but is vulnerable to corruption and mutation. The risk of the Black Rage, a psychic malady that drives some Astartes into uncontrollable fury and madness, is ever present. Apothecaries serve not only as medics but as guardians of the gene seed, tasked with ensuring the purity of their lineage and the survival of their chapter. This responsibility deepens the sense of solemnity and the weight of duty carried by every warrior. Relics and icons play a pivotal role in the spiritual life of the Astartes. Each chapter venerates its own sacred artifacts, banners soaked in the blood of martyrs, weapons wielded by legendary heroes, and armor adorned with symbols of honor and sacrifice. These relics are not mere trophies, but talismans imbued with the collective memory and spirit of the chapter. Rituals surrounding these objects are elaborate and solemn, reinforcing the bonds of brotherhood and the unbroken line of warriors stretching back through history. The Adeptus Astartes are also paradoxically human and other. Their armor and augmentation set them apart physically, but their culture strives to maintain a connection to human values: honor, loyalty, sacrifice, even as they transcend mortal limits. This tension between humanity and superhumanity is a defining feature, shaping their interactions with Imperial citizens, the ecclesiarchy, and even the Imperial Guard. They are feared and revered, myth and reality intertwined. This warrior culture is maintained through generations, perpetuated in the rigor of training, the weight of tradition, and the ceaseless drumbeat of war. The Adeptus Astartes exist not merely to fight, but to embody the imperishable spirit of mankind, relentless in purpose, unpredictable in battle, and unstoppable in their resolve. Yet the very intensity of their existence raises deeper questions. What remains of the man beneath the ceramite? Does endless war harden them into instruments, or do flickers of humanity endure beneath the armor? As the galaxy burns and the tides of war surge ever onward, the Adeptus Astartes carry these burdens silently, champions and victims of a destiny they cannot escape. Relentless, unpredictable, unstoppable, they are warriors, saints, and shadows, the eternal defenders of mankind, forged in the fires of culture, doctrine, and an unyielding warrior ethos. The Horus heresy is the dark fulcrum upon which the fate of the Imperium, and indeed the Adeptus Astartes, turns. It is the epoch of betrayal, madness, and cataclysm, a war so vast and shattering that its echoes continue to reverberate across millennia. This is the moment when the once unified legions of the Emperor's sons were sundered by treachery, and the relentless, unpredictable, and unstoppable warriors found themselves fractured and broken, locked in brother-against-brother slaughter. To understand the Adeptus Astartes, one must confront the shadow of the heresy, the devastating reckoning that shattered legends and forged new realities. Horus Lupercal, the favoured Primarch and the War Master of the Great Crusade, was the Emperor's chosen instrument to lead the Imperium's armies in his stead. Charismatic, brilliant, and beloved by his brothers and men alike, Horus embodied the apex of Astartes' might and leadership. Yet beneath the veneer of loyalty simmered darker currents: jealousy, pride, and the insidious whisperings of the warp. The ruinous powers of chaos, ancient and malevolent entities dwelling beyond reality's veil, reached out to Horus with promises of power and dominion. In a cruel twist of fate, the Emperor's most trusted son became the architect of humanity's greatest betrayal. The seeds of rebellion were sown in shadows, nurtured by manipulation and deceit. Horus was grievously wounded during the campaign on the moon of Davin, and in his near-death state he was seduced by the gifts of chaos, visions of glory and salvation, but twisted by corruption and madness. The War Master's fall was as swift as it was catastrophic. He turned against his father, rallying half the legions to his cause in a galactic civil war that would sunder the Imperium. This schism ripped through the Adeptus Astartes like a savage storm. Brother fought brother with relentless fury and unpredictable savagery. The legions, once united, by blood and purpose, fractured into loyalist and traitor factions. Battles of unimaginable scale and horror were waged across the stars. On Istvan III, where traitors purged loyalists with viral weapons. On Istvan V, where the betrayal culminated in a massacre that decimated loyalist forces. And on Terra itself, where the siege of the Imperial Palace tested the very metal of mankind's last bastion. The heresy was not merely a war of steel and bolter fire, but a battle for the soul of humanity. Chaos was not a mere enemy, but a corrupting force, capable of twisting minds, bodies, and even the very warp currents that sustain interstellar travel. The Adeptus Astartes, genetically enhanced and psychically potent, were uniquely vulnerable to this corruption. Some succumbed fully, becoming Chaos Space Marines, monstrous, twisted reflections of their former glory, driven by malice and madness. Others fought with unyielding loyalty, carrying the scars of betrayal but resolute in their purpose. The internal conflicts within the legions deepened the unpredictability of the heresy. Some Primarchs, like Leon L. Johnson and Rogel Dawn, stood as stalwart defenders of the Emperor's vision, embodying discipline and sacrifice. Others, like Angron and Lorgar, were consumed by rage or fanaticism, their loyalties fractured before the war's outbreak. This mosaic of allegiance and treachery underscored the complex nature of the Astartes, warriors shaped by fate and choice, torn between genetic destiny and personal will. The heresy wrought unprecedented devastation. Whole worlds were scorched, fleets shattered, and millions perished. The physical and psychological toll on the Adeptus Astartes was immense. Brothers who had once fought side by side became implacable enemies. Bonds forged in blood and fire were sundered. The loyalist chapters that survived bore the wounds of betrayal deeply, their cultures forever shaped by loss and vigilance against corruption. The siege of Terra was the war's climax, an apocalyptic battle fought in the heart of the Imperium. Horus's forces assaulted the Imperial Palace in a desperate gambit to overthrow the Emperor and claim dominion over mankind. The defenders were outnumbered but resolute, including the Loyalist legions, the Adeptus Custodes, and countless Imperial forces. The battle was a maelstrom of destruction and heroism, culminating in a final confrontation between father and son aboard the bridge of Horus's flagship. The Emperor struck down his once favoured son, but at a terrible cost. He was mortally wounded, confined to the Golden Throne, a life-sustaining device that barely preserves his existence. The aftermath of the Horus heresy reshaped the Imperium forever. The surviving Loyalist legions were broken into smaller chapters, as codified in the Codex Astartes, to prevent the concentration of power that had led to such disaster. The traitor legions fled into the Eye of Terror, becoming the Chaos Space. Marines, eternal enemies of the Imperium. The Imperium itself became a fortress state, obsessed with survival and vigilance against the myriad threats that lurked within and without. Yet the heresy left scars deeper than those etched in stone and ceramite. It shattered the myth of invincibility surrounding the Adeptus Astartes and the Emperor's vision. The unpredictable nature of loyalty, the fragility of brotherhood, and the corrupting allure of chaos revealed that even the mightiest warriors were not immune to fallibility. The relentless warriors had been broken, their unity lost, their purpose tested. The Horus heresy remains the darkest chapter in the Adeptus Astartes saga, a time when legends died and were reborn in fire and shadow. It is a story of betrayal, redemption, and the eternal struggle between order and chaos. As the Imperium stands on the precipice of ruin in the 41st millennium, the echoes of that cataclysm continue to haunt every battlefield, every warrior, and every soul. Relentless, unpredictable, unstoppable. Even in betrayal, the Adeptus Astartes endure, shadows of their former glory, warriors forged anew in the crucible of cataclysm. The galaxy in the wake of the Horus heresy did not find peace, but plunged into an endless maelstrom of conflict, a grinding war that would come to be known as the Long War. For the Adeptus Astartes, the scars of betrayal did not fade but hardened into resolve, forging them into grim sentinels of humanity's survival. This was a time defined by relentless struggle against Xenos empires, heretical uprisings, and the ever-present threat of chaos, a crucible that tested the adaptability, endurance, and unyielding spirit of the Emperor's angels. The fractured Imperium had become a vast, sprawling empire besieged on all fronts. The Eye of Terror, a warped rift in reality, was the festering stronghold of Chaos Space Marines and their demonic masters, a perpetual source of invasion and corruption. The Adeptus Astartes were dispatched to countless war zones, often as rapid response forces whose arrival turned the tide of battles that seemed lost. Yet the Long War was no grand campaign with clear objectives. It was a grinding attrition, a war of survival against enemies both known and unknowable. Xenos species once scattered and isolated rose to renewed prominence. The tyrannical tyrannids swarmed in endless waves, devouring worlds with insatiable hunger. The crafty Eldar wove enigmatic plots and strikes, their motives often inscrutable but their lethality unquestioned. The Orcs, brutal and chaotic, surged in maddened ways, threatening entire sectors with brutal, overwhelming force. Each enemy demanded unique responses, forcing the Adeptus Astartes to adapt beyond the rigid doctrines that had once defined them. This adaptability became a hallmark of the Astartes' survival. While the Codex Astartes provided foundational doctrine, individual chapters evolved tactics, equipment, and strategies tailored to their foes and environments. The Raven Guard perfected stealth and guerrilla warfare, striking unseen and disappearing like shadows. The White Scars embraced lightning-fast hit-and-run assaults, mirroring their nomadic culture. The Imperial Fists specialized in siege warfare, their impenetrable defenses holding the line against overwhelming odds. This diversity in warfare was both a strength and a necessity, reflecting the unpredictable threats faced across the galaxy. The Long War also intensified the psychological toll on the Adeptus Astartes. Generations of warriors lived and died on brutal battlefields, their memories heavy with loss and sacrifice. The burden of near immortality grew oppressive as brothers watched each other fall, sometimes without reprieve. Many chapters developed rituals and rites to cope with this unending sorrow. The honouring of ancestors, the recitation of liturgies, and the veneration of battle relics became essential to maintaining cohesion and morale. War also transformed the relationship between the Adeptus Astartes and the wider Imperium. While still revered as near-divine champions, the warriors became more isolated, their methods and motives often inscrutable to Imperial citizens and the ecclesiarchy alike. The constant demands of war stretched resources thin, forcing chapters to become self-sufficient, cultivating homeworlds or forge worlds to sustain their forces. The bond between the Astartes and the Imperium was a complex web of loyalty, fear, and reverence, fraught with tension but unbreakable. During this epoch, the Adeptus Astartes began to face internal challenges. The lingering corruption of the Black Rage haunted many warriors, a psychic echo of the Horus Heresy's darkest hour. Rogue psychers, cultists, and chaos infiltrators sought to undermine the chapters from within. Vigilance became paramount. Apothecaries and chaplains acted as both healers and spiritual guardians, combating corruption with equal fervour. The threat of mutation and insanity was a shadow ever present in the minds of warriors and commanders alike. Technological stagnation, a consequence of the Imperium's dogmatic approach, presented further challenges. The loss of many scientific archives during the heresy forced reliance on ancient relics and restricted innovation. The Adeptus Mechanicus guarded its secrets jealously, often at odds with the Astartes' battlefield needs. This tension sometimes slowed adaptation, forcing reliance on tradition over invention, a precarious balance in an ever-evolving war. Amidst this turmoil, new legends and heroes emerged. Chapters rose and fell, their deeds echoing across sectors. The Black Templars' zealous crusades against the heretic and alien renewed a militant fervour. The Death Watch, an elite chapter formed from various Astartes, specialised in combating Xenos threats with surgical precision. The Grey Knights, shrouded in mystery and psychic power, fought the demonic scourge directly, their existence a closely guarded secret. These diverse forces embodied the enduring spirit and unpredictability of the Adeptus Astartes. The Long War shaped not only tactics and technology, but the very identity of the Adeptus Astartes. Their relentless engagement with death and destruction forged a culture that embraced sacrifice, an unyielding duty as eternal truths. Their unpredictable adaptability ensured survival against overwhelming odds, while their unstoppable will kept the Imperium's flickering flame alive. Yet the relentless nature of this conflict also raised profound questions. Could a war without end preserve humanity? Or did it risk consuming all in an unquenchable blaze? Was the Adeptus Astartes' unyielding spirit a beacon of hope, or a harbinger of inevitable decline? As the stars burned and the galaxy bled, the Adeptus Astartes marched onward, relentless, unpredictable, unstoppable. The Long War was not merely a conflict of arms, but a crucible of spirit and endurance, shaping the Adeptus Astartes into the eternal warriors they remain. Their saga is one of endless battle, indomitable will, and the unshakable conviction that humanity must survive, no matter the cost. The Imperium of Man, vast and sprawling across 1,000,000 worlds, was already a fragile tapestry woven from the threads of war, faith, and endless vigilance. Yet the dawning of the 41st millennium brought forth a cataclysm unlike any before, the emergence of the Great Rift, a reality-shattering event that rent the galaxy asunder and plunged humanity into a darkness more profound than any war. For the Adeptus Astartes, this was not merely another chapter of battle. It was a crucible that would test their resilience, their unity, and their very existence. The Great Rift, also known as the Cicatrix Maledictum, tore open in the warp itself, splitting the galaxy into two halves, separated by an immaterium storm of unparalleled scale. This rift severed vital communication lines, destabilized the Astronomicon beacon, and isolated entire sectors from Imperial aid. Worlds fell silent, fleets vanished, and the Emperor's light seemed to dim in the void. The Adeptus Astartes, the Imperium's most potent defenders, were forced to confront a fractured reality, where the enemy was no longer always known, and the shadows between stars grew ever darker. The shattered Imperium was a realm of chaos and horror. On one side of the rift, loyalist forces fought desperately to hold the line against encroaching Xenos and traitor forces. On the other, entire sectors slipped into anarchy, consumed by heresy, alien dominion, or the insidious spread of the warp. The Adeptus Astartes were stretched thin, their chapters scattered and isolated, often forced to wage war alone against overwhelming odds. The unity that had once underpinned their strength was strained to breaking. The Great Rift did not merely fracture space, it shattered trust and coherence. Communication with the Adeptus Terra and the High Lords of Terra became sporadic or non-existent. Each chapter was left to interpret their own mission and make decisions in isolation, a burden that bred both ingenuity and dangerous divergence. Some chapters hardened into zealous defenders, others fell into secrecy and paranoia, while a few took darker paths, succumbing to desperation or corruption. This era also saw the resurgence of chaos forces, emboldened by the warp's turbulence. Demonic incursions increased exponentially, and the Chaos Space Marines launched coordinated strikes, exploiting the Imperium's fractured state. The Adeptus Astartes faced enemies not only without, but also within, as cults and traitors exploited the confusion. The Black Legion, the infamous remnants of Horus's forces, surged forth from the Eye of Terror, spreading ruin and despair. The Adeptus Astartes were the thin line holding back the tide of oblivion. The nature of warfare evolved under these conditions. Chapters employed more guerrilla tactics, covert operations, and desperate defences. Reinforcements were rare and often delayed, forcing commanders to rely on local resources and forge alliances with other Imperial forces. This shift demanded adaptability and resourcefulness, traits the Adeptus Astartes had always possessed, but now relied upon for survival rather than triumph. The Great Rift also strained the bond between the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Astartes. The disruption of supply lines and the loss of Forge World support forced many chapters to scavenge and innovate. Some adopted relic weapons and experimental technologies long thought lost or forbidden. This desperation sometimes led to clashes over doctrine and control, as the Mechanicum guarded their secrets while the Astartes sought any advantage in the worsening war. Amidst the darkness, stories of heroism and sacrifice multiplied. Chapters like the Ultramarines held the vital realm of Ultramar, fighting to maintain a bastion of order in the chaos. The Blood Angels grappled with their own curse while battling endless enemies. The Death Watch conducted deadly strikes against Xenos infiltrators, often at the cost of their own numbers. Each battle was a testament to the relentless will and unpredictable resilience that defined the Adeptus Astartes. Yet the Great Rift also deepened the mysteries and enigmas surrounding the Astartes. The very nature of their gene seed, their psychic potential, and their connection to the Emperor became topics of grim speculation. Some whispered of new mutations, others feared the awakening of ancient curses. The boundaries between human and superhuman blurred further in the crucible of unending war and isolation. The shattering Imperium raised profound philosophical questions for the Adeptus Astartes. Was their relentless struggle a beacon of hope, or a futile resistance against an inevitable darkness? Could the Emperor's vision survive such fragmentation? Or was the Imperium doomed to decay into endless war and despair? These questions haunted even the mightiest warriors, underscoring the fragile line between salvation and ruin. Relentless, unpredictable, unstoppable. The Adeptus Astartes endure in the shadows of the Great Rift, defenders on a broken front, their spirits unbowed even as the galaxy fractures around them. In the relentless march of time across a galaxy ravaged by ceaseless war, few moments stand as pivotal and irrevocable as the turning point when the Adeptus Astartes faced their greatest trial, an event that would forever alter the destiny of mankind and echo across the stars. This climax was not a singular battle or campaign, but a profound transformation of the Adeptus Astartes' role, purpose and very nature, driven by forces both external and internal, visible and unseen. It was a crucible of spirit and resolve, a juncture where the relentless, unpredictable and unstoppable warriors were tested beyond measure. The galaxy's wars had escalated to unprecedented ferocity during the era of the Great Rift, with the Imperium's borders under siege by enemies old and new. Chaos incursions became more frequent and devastating. Xenos empires consolidated power, and heretical uprisings spread like wildfire. Against this backdrop of disintegration, the Adeptus Astartes found themselves compelled to evolve or face extinction. The burden of guardianship pressed heavily, forcing them to reconsider their strategies, alliances, and even their genetic and spiritual foundations. The War of the Beast, a colossal conflict during the 32nd millennium, stands as an early harbinger of this shift. The Orcs, led by a creature of unimaginable size and cunning, nearly overwhelmed the Imperium's defences, exposing the limitations of even the mightiest chapters. The Adeptus Astartes rallied with indomitable ferocity, but the conflict revealed that raw strength alone could no longer guarantee survival. Adaptation was no longer optional, it was imperative. The rupture caused by the Great Rift only intensified these pressures. With communications severed and reinforcements delayed indefinitely, many chapters began operating independently, forging new doctrines and forging alliances with Imperial Guard regiments, planetary militias, and even Xenos mercenaries in some rare cases. This pragmatic approach was controversial, challenging long-held doctrines that forbade fraternization with non-Astartes forces or reliance on unproven allies. Yet necessity dictated action. At the genetic level, deeper experimentation with gene seed took place, as chapters sought to counteract the risks of mutation and loss. Some embraced radical modification, while others sought purity above all else, sometimes to the point of rigidity and intolerance. This divergence birthed new strains of Astartes, some exhibiting unprecedented abilities, others succumbing to unforeseen maladies. The line between human and superhuman grew ever and more tenuous. Spiritually, the Adeptus Astartes confronted their own beliefs and legacies. The death of the Emperor, or more precisely his entombment within the Golden Throne, cast a long shadow. The Emperor's physical absence forced the Astartes to become both leaders and symbols of hope in a darkening galaxy. The ecclesiarchy's grip tightened, but the Astartes maintained a complicated relationship with the imperial faith, balancing devotion with pragmatism. Some chapters adopted quasi-religious zeal, while others held fast to martial discipline over dogma. This era also witnessed the rise of the Grey Knights as a secret weapon against demonic threats, wielding psychic power and mysterious rites beyond the ken of most Astartes. Their emergence marked a turning point in the Imperium's defense against the warp, demonstrating the necessity of embracing new forms of warfare and spirituality. Meanwhile, other chapters continued their eternal crusades, their banners bloodied but unbowed. The irreversible shift was also marked by the increasing prominence of the Primaris Space Marines, genetically enhanced warriors introduced by Robert Guilliman in the 41st millennium. These new Astartes were taller, stronger, and equipped with advanced weaponry and armor, representing both an evolution and a challenge to the traditions of existing chapters. The Primaris Marines symbolized the Imperium's desire to renew and strengthen its warriors, but also sparked tensions over identity, doctrine, and heritage. Amidst these changes, the Adeptus Astartes remained relentless. Their unpredictability in battle, whether through sudden strikes, unorthodox tactics, or sheer ferocity, continued to confound enemies and inspire allies. Their unstoppable will, forged in centuries of unyielding combat, sustained them against overwhelming odds. Yet the climax was bittersweet. The transformation came with costs: cultural upheaval, doctrinal fragmentation, and the loss of old certainties. The Adeptus Astartes were no longer a monolith, but a mosaic of traditions, innovations, and contradictions. Their unity was fractured, but their resolve hardened. This moment of irreversible shift posed profound questions. Could the Adeptus Astartes reconcile their ancient legacies with the demands of a brutal present? Would their relentless spirit endure the trials ahead, or would they be consumed by the very war they fought to contain? As the galaxy trembled on the edge of oblivion, the Adeptus Astartes stood at a crossroads, forever changed yet unbroken. Relentless, unpredictable, unstoppable. The Adeptus Astartes endure, an indomitable spirit in a galaxy of darkness. The saga of the Adeptus Astartes is one of relentless endurance, a chronicle written in blood, fire, and unyielding purpose. As the 41st millennium unfolds, their legacy is both a beacon of hope and a grim reminder of the costs borne by those who walk the path of the Emperor's angels. The Adeptus Astartes remain the Imperium's ultimate defenders, their unstoppable presence a bulwark against the darkness, but their story is far from over. It is a living testament to the eternal vigilance required to preserve humanity's fragile light in a galaxy drowning in shadows. The legacy of the Adeptus Astartes is inseparable from the countless wars they have fought and the sacrifices they have made. Their deeds echo across the stars, from the blood-soaked battlefields of Armageddon to the shattered ruins of Cadia, from the lost realms of Ultramar to the haunted corridors of the Eye of Terror. Each chapter carries its own history, its own martyrs, and its own legends, woven into the vast tapestry of the Imperium's martial tradition. These stories inspire new generations, binding the living to the memory of the fallen in an unbroken chain of honour and sacrifice. Yet legacy is not static. It is a force shaped by time, conflict, and choice. The Adeptus Astartes have adapted and evolved, their tactics refined and their doctrines challenged by the ever-changing threats they face. The arrival of the Primaris Marines signals a new chapter in their history, promising renewed strength but also stirring controversy and uncertainty. The integration of these new warriors tests the traditions and cohesion of existing chapters, prompting reflection on identity and purpose. The eternal vigil the Astartes maintain is not merely against external foes but also internal decay. The threats of corruption, mutation, and heresy persist like hidden cancers, demanding constant vigilance. Apothecaries and chaplains stand guard over both body and soul, ensuring the purity and honour of their brethren. The war within is as deadly as the war without, a ceaseless battle to preserve the warrior spirit against the encroaching shadows of madness and despair. The Adeptus Astartes also carry a profound philosophical burden, the knowledge that their very existence is entwined with sacrifice and loss. Their near immortality is a double-edged sword, offering the wisdom of centuries but also the weight of unending war. They are both champions and victims of the Emperor's will, living myths caught between humanity and something beyond. Their relentless drive is fueled not only by duty but by an understanding of the impermanence of all things. In the broader scope of the Imperium, the Adeptus Astartes remain the ultimate symbol of hope and fear. To the common citizen, they are angels of death and salvation, to the enemies of mankind, harbingers of doom, and to themselves, the last line between order and chaos. This paradox defines their legacy, a force both revered and feared, bound by duty and haunted by the sacrifices demanded of them. As the galaxy stands on the brink of further darkness, the Adeptus Astartes continue their unyielding march. Their banners wave over war-torn worlds, their bolters roar in defense of humanity, and their ceramite armor shines as a testament to endurance and resolve. They embody the eternal struggle of mankind, a struggle without end, without rest, and without surrender. Relentless, unpredictable, unstoppable. The Adeptus Astartes are the Emperor's eternal vigil, warriors forged in the fires of war, guardians of humanity's fragile flame. Beneath the gleaming armor and battle-hardened resolve of the Adeptus Astartes lies a labyrinth of secrets, whispered truths concealed behind veils of ritual, silence, and shadow. The saga of the Emperor's Angels is not merely one of open warfare and grand deeds, but also of enigmas that defy understanding, mysteries that shape their fate from the darkness, and hidden knowledge jealously guarded from all but a select few. To truly grasp the essence of the Adeptus Astartes is to venture into these shadows, to peer behind the myths and uncover the truths that lie beneath. One such secret revolves around the very origins of the gene seed, the genetic legacy extracted from the Primarchs, the Emperor's lost sons, whose fate remains shrouded in both legend and sorrow. While it is known that each chapter's gene seed is a fragment of their Primarch's essence, the precise nature of this process, the source of the Primarchs themselves, and the Emperor's ultimate designs remain subjects of speculation and conjecture. Some whisper that the Primarchs were more than mere sons, that they were living embodiments of the Emperor's grand plan to transcend mortal limits, yet their destruction scattered this hope across the stars. The gene seed itself harbours dangers hidden even from the chapters. Mutations, corruption, and the insidious influence of chaos threaten its purity. The loss or degradation of gene seed can doom a chapter to extinction, a fate known as the death of a chapter. Apothecaries are the guardians of this precious legacy, harvesting gene seed with ritualistic reverence and carrying the weight of ensuring their brother's survival. But beyond the surface, some question whether the gene seed carries memories or even fragments of the Primarch's consciousness, a secret that could alter the understanding of identity and loyalty. Another profound mystery is the nature of the Adeptus Astartes' psychic potential. While most are not psychers in the traditional sense, many possess latent psychic abilities, enhanced reflexes, and heightened perceptions that border on the supernatural. The link between their gene seed, the warp, and their minds is a tenuous one, fraught with peril. Some chapters cultivate psychers among their ranks, while others forbid such practices outright, fearing corruption. The origins and limits of these abilities remain obscure, a shadowy domain of the Imperium's most secretive adepts. The rituals and liturgies surrounding the Adeptus Astartes also conceal layers of hidden meaning. Their sacred ceremonies are filled with symbols and rites that may appear arcane but serve as anchors for their identity, discipline, and resilience. These traditions preserve knowledge encoded in myth, guiding their conduct and reinforcing their bond to the Emperor and each other. Yet, as much as these rites unify, they also isolate, creating an aura of mystery that deepens the gap between the Astartes and the rest of humanity. Even the origins of the chapters themselves hold secrets. While some trace their lineage directly to a Primarch and his legion, others arose from the mysterious founding events, splinter groups, reforged legions, or newly created gene seed strains. The motives behind these creations, the political intrigues within the High Lords of Terror, and the clandestine operations of the Adeptus Mechanicus intertwine in a web of secrecy and power struggles. This hidden history shapes the present-day dynamics between chapters, influencing alliances and rivalries alike. Perhaps the greatest lingering mystery is the fate of the Emperor himself. His entombment within the Golden Throne is known, but the full extent of his power, consciousness, and influence remains inscrutable. Some Astartes believe he watches over them, guiding their actions. Others fear his death is imminent, a harbinger of doom for the Imperium. This uncertainty fuels both faith and despair, shaping the spiritual landscape of the Adeptus Astartes and the Imperium at large. These secrets and shadows do not merely intrigue, they shape the Adeptus Astartes' very existence. They are the unseen forces that guide their decisions, the hidden burdens they carry, and the enigmas that drive their relentless quest for survival and purpose. The Adeptus Astartes are not simply warriors. They are custodians of forbidden knowledge and living enigmas themselves. Relentless, unpredictable, unstoppable. In the shadows of secrets, the Adeptus Astartes endure, guardians of humanity's future and mysteries yet unsolved. To stand in the presence of the Adeptus Astartes is to confront the paradox of humanity itself, a fusion of exalted ideals and primal brutality, a testament to the indomitable will to survive and the tragic cost of that survival. Their story is etched not only in the blood of countless wars, but also in the questions they raise about identity, destiny, and the price of power. As the saga of the Emperor's Angels reaches this philosophical epilogue, we delve into the essence of what it means to be both man and myth, both soldier and symbol, caught eternally between light and shadow. The Adeptus Astartes embody the relentless spirit of mankind's survival instinct, elevated to near-divine levels through the Emperor's vision and science. They are relentless in their duty, unpredictable in their methods, and unstoppable in their resolve. An apex predator designed for war in a universe where peace is a fleeting illusion. Yet beneath the surface of their might lies the tension between the human and the superhuman, a duality that defines their existence. They are guardians of humanity, yet in many ways they stand apart from it, transformed, isolated and bound by a code that transcends individual will. This duality raises profound philosophical questions. What remains of the man beneath the armour? Does the endless cycle of war harden the soul into something unrecognizable, or does it reveal the core essence of humanity's struggle? The Astartes' near immortality offers the wisdom of centuries, but burdens them with the trauma of unending loss and sacrifice. Their loyalty to the Emperor and the Imperium is absolute, yet it is a loyalty forged in fire, tempered by doubt, and shadowed by the knowledge of their own limitations and the Imperium's flaws. The Adeptus Astartes also exist as symbols, mythic figures that inspire hope and fear, faith and despair. Their deeds are told in legend and liturgy, their presence on the battlefield a catalyst for courage or terror. This symbolic weight shapes their actions and their very identity, creating a self-perpetuating cycle where myth and reality blur. They become not merely warriors, but icons of humanity's eternal struggle against darkness, both external and within. Their existence invites reflection on the nature of power and sacrifice. The Emperor's vision was one of unity, progress and salvation through strength, but it came at a cost measured in lives, souls and the fracturing of ideals. The Astartes are the living embodiment of that vision's triumphs and tragedies. They are champions of order in a galaxy defined by chaos, yet their methods often mirror the very brutality they oppose. This tension is the crucible in which their identity is forged. In the vast expanse of the 41st millennium, the Adeptus Astartes stand as both shield and sword, defenders against annihilation and instruments of an unforgiving destiny. Their relentless struggle is a reflection of humanity's broader condition, caught between hope and despair, creation and destruction, light and shadow. They are a mirror held up to the Imperium itself, revealing its strengths, its flaws, and its unyielding will to endure. As the galaxy teeters on the brink, the Adeptus Astartes embody a paradoxical truth, that in their relentless, unpredictable, and unstoppable nature lies both salvation and sacrifice, both heroism and tragedy. They are eternal warriors, bound by duty yet haunted by their own humanity, forever walking the line between light and shadow, relentless, unpredictable, unstoppable. The Adeptus Astartes endure, not merely as warriors, but as legends forged in the fire of a dying galaxy, eternal sentinels of mankind's fragile hope.